Shalom. Allah start out by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Harakakadash, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, citations to the Ophelet that's pushing his truth across four corners of the earth in all faith, truth, and sincerity. This I'm on about getting us sitting. It's gonna be a quick one. This one going to real quick. Just how these so-called white people, red Edomite devils, they time of their rulership, is gonna come to, it's coming to an end, eventually it's gonna, these Edomites, these wicked Edomite devils, they're gonna be completely just done away with, being removed out of the power seat, out the way, that time is is near. It's not too far, and look outside, they're gonna make its return and remove these wicked Edomite devils out of the power seat, out of rulership, man, so who y'all call Jebus, the real name of the Lord Yahushua is not Jebus, but I'm gonna start off with Psalms 37. Wait a minute. Matter of fact, no. Psalms 37 and 9. For evildoers shall be cut off, but those that wait upon the Lord Yahweh shall inherit the earth. For evildoers shall be cut off. Hey, so the wicked, the ones in power, the so-called white people, red Edomite devils, they they the evil ones, they are the wicked, they got everything, just about everything you're saying, not everything, but just about, but they messing up the water, the air, and the food, and they got the people confused, and they pushed out lies and deception, about the understanding of the Lord, understanding the word of the Lord, Yahweh Shai, the Lord, the word of the Lord, who the Lord is, according to, the pitching of the Lord, and just a whole bunch of false, information, but now we in the time of, these so-called white people, red Edomite devils, and they are being exposed, they are being exposed for who they are, and that's, by way of this word, that the apostles and the elders and brother Great Millstone teach, through the spirit power of Lord Yahweh Shai, exposing who this so-called white Edomite devil is, going into the actual history and and backing up with the word of the Lord, and also prophesying, that the downfall of this so-called white people, red Edomite devils, the time of their rulership, knows that it's coming to an end, and their time is running out, and like I said, they're gonna go into slavery, they're gonna go into 1,000 years of slavery, and once they time of slavery is up, they're gonna be done away with, they're gonna be eradicated, gonna be done, but we in those times, hey, these Edomites, they time of rule is at its end, these wicked red devils, but those that wait upon the Lord Yahweh Shai, they shall inherit the earth. So the ones that gonna wait and be patient, and wait upon the Lord Yahweh Shai, to be rewarded for their faithfulness, and didn't give up no matter what. Kept their faith until the end, and kept this truth, and kept believing Lord Yahweh Shai. Is the elect of the so-called Negro, Latino natives, which are the Israelites, Hopefully I'm probably righteous enough, But only the elect is going to wait upon the Lord, and Lord Yahweh Shai is going to reward his elect, for their faithfulness, and believing on him, no matter what they, went through and waiting upon him, But, and like I said, the elect, is going to, get that crown, get crowned by Lord Yahweh Shai, you know, and have everything's gonna be brand new, right? It's gonna be changed, being a new body and so forth, and everything is gonna be, just changed and, beautified, and it's gonna be, it's gonna be amazing. No more, I'll say more than amazing, but it's gonna be amazing, man. Like I say, great. It's gonna be just that relief that ain't no more of this, being under the so-called white red Edomite doubles, man. No more had to worry about, you gotta pay this and this and that and all, stressing out where it may be. No more dealing with, this defiled, food and so forth, man. No more of this confusion and all this wickedness going on, It's gonna be done away with. But Psalm 37:10, for yet a little while, the wicked shall not be. Yeah, thou shalt diligently consider his place, and it shall not be. So yeah, so for yet a little while. So hey, like I said, these so-called white red Edomite doves, they like I just said, not too long. Their time really is winding down. They ain't got much time left. They ain't gonna be they're gonna be out the way. This nightmare, this nightmare, that the so-called Negro, Latino, Native Israelite that they're in, being terrorized by these Edomite doubles, man. And being oppressed. It's gonna be done away with, man. It's gonna be, they're gonna be out. It's gonna be, they're gonna be out the way. There ain't gonna be no more. The Lord, like I said, Lord Yahushua, who y'all call Jeebus, is gonna return chariots to all your foe with the angels and remove these wicked Edomite devils out the way, out of the power seat, man. So, but I'm gonna go to Psalms 37:11. I'm gonna end off of this. I ain't gonna make it too long. But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. And so the meek shall inherit the earth. So who's like I say, the elect, right? The elect of the so-called Negro, Latino, Native Israelites gonna inherit the earth and more. Like I said, 2/3 Israelites that die on the side. Hopefully, like me myself, like hopefully I'm probably righteous enough, to escape the wrath of judge, Lord Yahweh, be delivered, have mercy, But 2/3 Israelites that don't make it and die on this side, they're gonna return the kingdom and return back in the kingdom as babies through the elect men. Let men, come through the women, out of the women, So and I say, it's gonna be, everything gonna be how it's supposed to be in righteousness, and the earth is gonna be, the earth is gonna, the animals and the earth's gonna be, back to how it's supposed to be, and better than what it is right now. It's gonna be, the water, everything in the air, and I said the animals are gonna rejoice in the trees. It's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be, the earth's gonna be way more beautiful than what you see now. Because these Edomite doubles they done almost damn near messed up the whole earth. But Lord Yahweh, he's gonna make it. He's gonna correct it. It's gonna the earth is gonna be more better. More clean and fresh and so forth, man. Everything's gonna be in righteous, in the righteous order, and the people as well. It ain't gonna be no confusion about what's true and what's not or whatever, and knowing who the real children of Israel is, the elect. The Israelites, who the real Israelites are, and who the Lord is, and so forth, and I say, ain't gonna be no more war, and no more pain, no more suffering, crying, or worrying, or having that you having that uncertainty about, hey, is I'm gonna make it tomorrow, whatever, make it through the day or tomorrow, whatever it may be, you won't have that uncertainty no more. It's gonna be, for the so-called Negro, Latino Israelites, the kingdom gonna be forever, You know, it's gonna be, you're not gonna experience this, you know, being in this hell, you know, in this, you know, being in this body too, because this body is subject to pain and so forth, right? You have to deal with these elements of, of pains and sufferings, and that men of Lord, you know, apostles, elders, and brother Graham Millstone may be dealing with, you know, that is hurting them. And you know, I say because these are chains of darkness, and you know, being in this judgment seat, right? Is, you know, he's subject to these pains and sufferings in his body and so forth, but that's gonna be done away with, you know, once, you know, hopefully not probably righteous number, like once the elect, a so-called Negro, Latino, Native Israelite men, you know, so forth, those that part of righteous number don't get beamed up chairs, so-called your folk get changed, you know, to a new body, you know, and don't have to deal with these pains and so forth like that, and these bodies will maybe and so forth, and you know, so you know, I didn't want to make this too long, you know. This so-called white man, Edomites world, you know, their rulership is coming to an end, man. You know, me myself, first and foremost, just gotta hold on, keep the faith until the end, you know. And those that believe, Lord Yahweh Shai, keep the faith until the end. It goes to me first and foremost again. Keep believing and keep the faith, no matter what, man. You know, so with that, Lord willing, hope this is edifying. So again, I'd like to give our praise and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem. Rahak HaKadosh, to the apostle elders, to the sister brothers, to the few Akawaf sisters that do listen, keep the faith, and Yahushua keep fighting. That says Shalom.